Hey, this is the World Advice Channel 2. What I want to talk about today is a topic of should the Republican Party be abolished? So for this video, as a left-wing person, I discuss the topic of the Republican Party, which has a history of expressing xenophobic belief systems from racism, sexism, religious hate, all that type of stuff. Should they be banned as a whole? Their party, in other words, they get rid of the Republican Party, or should they not? Is what I'll be, discussing for this video. So now that I mentioned that, let's get started. So simply put it, absolutely not. I do not think that'd be a good idea to get rid of the Republican Party. And the reason why I think it'd be a terrible idea to get rid of the Republican Party is it simply comes down to the fact that the Republican Party, to answer your question, is one of the main of the two parties, or I should say one of the two parties that make up America, okay? To get rid of the Republican Party as a whole and replace it with like a new party, especially when we realize how fucking useless most politicians are anyway in getting anything done, would be an extremely hard process that would take like forever to do. It wouldn't even be months or even a year. It would be easily years to create a new party, because you'd have to figure out what the party stands for, what their beliefs are, and so on and so forth, which would take a long ass freaking time. Let alone obviously the fucking fact, down to that as well, we can't just have one political party just say we're just gonna have the Democratic Party, because if we just had one party, then it would just make sure that there is a lot more corruption, because there wouldn't be anyone really to challenge them. So to answer your question, definitely not. I don't think the Republican Party needs to go away, but it definitely needs to have massive reforms, because the thing about the Republican Party for many years, for that matter, is it just stood for racism, specifically anti-black racism, to be quite blunt and honest with you, okay? So when it comes to having these reforms, obviously the best thing you'd probably want to do, in all honesty, when it comes to having these reforms, obviously no shit, these reforms, to be quite blunt and honest with you, is you'd obviously have to get rid of a lot of members who are very toxic and negative, and not just get rid of a lot of those members, you'd also have to implement a lot of new people in to, of course, replace a lot of those, old members. No shit, so as a result, you have to, make sure there's something, that obviously can replace the bad ones, as well as something that can also get rid of the bad ones in the first place, the bad Republicans, like the ones who are strong, hardcore supporters of Trump and this and that, and have a long history of supporting anti-black racism, and might even, a lot of them for that matter, might have been people who've actually seen lynchings and stuff. So in real life, things that we just look back at and say this is a part of history book, they actually witnessed it, let alone some might even be people who actually met people who were members of the Confederacy, who of course fought in a civil war. You'll be surprised the amount of people who live among us today who actually met people who were born in the 1800s. You'll be surprised, because in the greater scheme of things, it wasn't even that long ago. So to answer your question though, to be quite blunt and honest with you, we need to get rid of a lot of those members. To be quite honest with you, I ain't saying all the old ones are like that, but pretty much all of them, the vast majority of the old Republicans are like that. They are very racist, they are very hateful, and they have a long history of hate, not just against blacks, but even against other groups of people. They're very evil, and they need to go, okay? And that's the truth, when it comes to obviously the topic of obviously the Republican Party for that matter. So if you can obviously do that, then we'll live in a much better, happier world, when it comes to this topic. If there was a way, of course, to get rid of the Republican Party, if maybe they did something really terrible, just come up with a scenario here, and obviously, we have to do something about it. Saying that we're going to abolish the party will just be impractical, because it would take like forever to create a new party. It cause a lot of problems, and it would just make it more likely that there could be a lot of corruption from the Democratic Party, because if you just have one party, you're going to have a lot of corruption, and that's the truth. So that's why they have two parties anyway. So that's my first main point. So in short, to answer your question, no, I don't think it would be a good idea to get rid of the Republican Party. It would be too hard to do, for that matter. Okay, too hard to do. Whether you're talking about like how to create a new party, or of course, the problem of encouraging corruption to happen. Because if you just have one party, then they have no one to compete against. If you have no one to compete against, then they pretty much are less likely to feel threatened, and they're going to do whatever the hell they want to do without having to worry about consequences. It's just like, for example, just having one company. If I just have one company, then that company can do whatever the hell they want, versus having a second or third or fourth and fifth and so on and so forth company. So it makes it likely that the main company doesn't cause any problems. In other words, they actually put an effort to do things well, which is competition, which is the point of why they have two parties in America instead of just one. Because you just have one party, just like if you have one business, they're going to obviously be corrupt, and that's the truth. So that's my first main point. And the second main point is that the problem with having just one party, or in other words, getting rid of the Republican Party as a whole, it brings up a very big issue. Because the truth of the matter is, as we all know as human beings, okay, we are not all the same, okay? We are different, but at the same time, you can definitely lump people into a few main categories for anything. Specifically, usually two main categories for everything, okay? And when it comes to, why some people see the world one way, like some people are more focused on, the world this way, like doing whatever you want. Some people focus on the world, there should be restrictions, like that. That's actually a part of what makes human beings as powerful as we are today, because we have people who have different beliefs and opinions, so as a result, when it comes to different worldviews, we can have people who can know how to deal with something based on whatever situation is. If everyone thought the same main way, then it'll make it more likely it'd be harder to solve a problem, because when situations come up in life, specifically for politics, like war, maybe it could be, another one could be a natural disaster, or maybe something else like financial issues, whatever, okay? You can't just have people who have one main way of seeing the world as a way of solving a problem, which is why we have different political belief systems like liberalism and republicanism, or I should say liberalism and conservatism, but you get the point, okay? So what I'm trying to say here is that saying to get rid of the Republican Party would be a terrible thing, because we're going to have people who have only one political belief system, if you're even able to create another party, to replace the Conservative Party, which, as I mentioned earlier in the video, if they got rid of the Republican Party, they'd have to replace it with another party. If they replace it with another party, it's probably going to be just another liberal party, which wouldn't make any sense, So the truth of the matter is, you obviously have to have people who have a certain way of thinking that's different from one way, because not all the time in life when situations come up, on a national level, you can just have people who have one way of thinking, which if you have people who have one way of thinking, like a political way of thinking, which is the point of a political ideology like liberalism, then it makes it more likely they might not know how to deal with situations that happen a certain way. So you need to have different looks and opinions and perspectives, for that matter. And conservatism obviously serves a counterbalance to the main left-wing way of thinking, It's just that the truth of the matter is that that we need to do reforms because a lot of the conservatives have a history of promoting hateful, bigoted beliefs. If they can get rid of that, then the Conservative Party can stay. So, in short, to answer your question, no, I don't think the Republican Party needs to be abolished. I just simply think they need to have massive reforms, and that is my honest thoughts on that. So, in short, that is all I have to say for this video. I hope I answered your question. And just remember, if you like this video and videos like this, remember to thumbs this video up and hit the subscribe button. And that is all I have to say, and simply put it on out. So, bye.